Welcome. Before we begin this declassified journey, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, and in the comments below, let me know where in the world you are watching from. Now, let's begin. The air on Mount Hermon is thin and cold. It is a place of silence, a peak of snow and rock that exists above the noise of the world. But here, in the concrete and steel heart of the eyes of Israel, there is no silence. There is only the hum of servers and the quiet, focused energy of analysts from Unit 8200, the Signals Intelligence Corps. They are the nation's digital sentinels, listening to the symphony of enemy communication, waiting for a single, discordant note. On a Tuesday in early spring, that note arrived. A young analyst named Ben, his face pale in the blue glow of a dozen screens, flagged an encrypted transmission. It wasn't the content that worried him. It was the source and the telemetry that followed. Deep inside Syria, from a known SSRC, Scientific Studies and Research Center, facility near Hama, a test was initiated. The data streamed in. It wasn't a Scud. It wasn't a variant of the M600. The burn pattern was wrong. The acceleration curve was impossibly steep. The telemetry indicated a two-stage, solid-fuel propellant system. Scuds were liquid-fueled, cumbersome, slow to prepare. They were weapons of terror. This was a weapon of strategy. Solid fuel meant it could be launched from a mobile platform in minutes. The estimated range, 700 kilometers. The estimated accuracy, a CEP, circular error probable, of less than 30 meters. It can't be, Ben's supervisor muttered, leaning so close his breath fogged the screen. On the map, the theoretical impact radius wasn't just hitting northern Israel, it was covering Tel Aviv. It was covering the Syria, Israel's military headquarters. It was covering the nuclear facility at Dimona. Within an hour, the recording of the launch and Ben's telemetry analysis were on a secure server in Tel Aviv, in the headquarters of the Mossad, known simply as Syria. In a sterile, soundproof room, the director of Mossad, known as the Mamune, met with the head of Amman, military intelligence. The mood was not panic. It was something colder. It was the clinical recognition of a paradigm shift. For years we have accepted Assad's arsenal as a known quantity, the head of Amman said, his hands clasped behind his back. The Scuds are inaccurate. The chemical weapons are a red line he knows not to cross. This changes the math. The Memone, a man named Eitan, simply stared at the trajectory on the large screen. A liquid fuel missile is a threat. A solid fuel missile is a declaration. It's a gun held permanently to our head. You can't negotiate with a man whose finger is already on the trigger. He turned to his chief of operations. We knew they were trying. We did not know they were succeeding. We focused on the Iranian nuclear file, and this grew in the shadow. Find out who. The command was simple. Who was the mind? A program this advanced, this precise, is not the work of a committee. It is the work of a visionary. It is the work of a single, irreplaceable intellect. We aren't just targeting a program, Eitan said, his voice quiet but absolute. We are targeting a brain. Find me the genius. The file was opened. The operation had no name. Not yet. It was just a question that demanded an answer before that 30-meter CEP became a 0-meter reality in the heart of their nation. The search for the genius was a forensic trawl through the digital and human refuse of the Syrian state. Mossad's research division, the Somet Junction, began sifting through mountains of data. They cross-referenced every known physicist, engineer, and academic associated with the SSRC. They reactivated dormant assets, psionim helpers, in European universities, asking for lists of promising Syrian students from the last 2 decades. For weeks, the search yielded only bureaucratic functionaries and mid-level engineers. Then a name emerged, flagged not by a human asset, but by an algorithm. Dr. Azim Al-Khalil. The file was thin, almost purposefully clean. Born in Homs, educated in Damascus, but then a ghost period, a doctorate from a prestigious university in Germany. His field, advanced aerospace propulsion and guidance systems. He had published 2 papers, both highly theoretical, on solid fuel burn rates. Then, 5 years ago, he had vanished from the academic world. A Mossad operations team was tasked with building a pattern of life. They used satellite imagery, signal intercepts, and a low-level financial asset inside the Syrian Ministry of Defense. The picture that emerged was not of a monster. It was of a patriot. Dr. Al-Khalil was 48 years old. He was married with 2 young children. He was quiet, devout, and incorruptible. He didn't drink. He didn't gamble. He had no vices the Mossad could easily exploit. His only passion, outside of his family, was Vivaldi's The Four Seasons and the complex beauty of differential equations. He had been personally recruited by the regime, not through threats, but through appeals to nationalism. He was given an unlimited budget and a team of 50, shielded from the country's grinding civil war. He was, in essence, Syria's Oppenheimer. In one intercept, a Syrian general is heard berating a subordinate. "I don't care about the cost. If Dr. Al-Khalil asks for platinum, you will find him platinum. His mind is our nation's shield." Eitan reviewed the file in his office. On one screen was the telemetry of the missile. On the other was a grainy surveillance photo of Dr. Al-Khalil. He was carrying his daughter on his shoulders, buying her ice cream from a street vendor in Damascus. The juxtaposition was jarring. This was the man who could end thousands of lives, stopping to wipe chocolate from his child's face. "He's clean," the summit chief reported. "No blackmail material. He's protected by Presidential Guard Unit 717. His facility is a fortress. His home is a fortress. He is, for all intents and purposes, a ghost who only exists between those 2 points." "A ghost," Eitan mused. "Then we need to find a way to haunt him." The problem was clear. Dr. Al-Khalil was not just a component of the missile program. He was the program. His brain held the codes, the formulas, the next-generation designs. His backups were analog, his most critical work done on a simple blackboard, photographed and then erased. This level of operational security, Eitan knew, was born of a singular, brilliant paranoia. Al-Khalil wasn't just a genius, he was a careful genius. "If we can't get to his work," Eitan said to his team, "we have only one option. We must get to him. But how do you touch a man who lives in a vault?" The first attempt would not be with a bullet. It would be with bits and bytes. Before a Kedon, a spear team is ever considered, before the high-risk, irreversible final act is put on the table, the digital option is always explored. The Caesarea computer labs, in conjunction with Unit 8200, were tasked with the first phase. Operation Midas, an attempt to touch the untouchable. The goal was not to remove Al-Khalil, but to cripple his work. If the genius could be rendered impotent, his data corrupted, his supply chains sabotaged, his simulations forced to fail, the threat might be neutralized without a physical footprint. For 3 months, a team of Israel's best cyber warfare specialists mapped the SSRC's digital infrastructure. It was, as expected, a fortress. But it had one vulnerability: human arrogance. A mid-level administrator at the facility had a weakness for online chess. The team crafted a spear-phishing email. It didn't come from a Nigerian prince. It came from a spoofed grandmaster in Russia, inviting the administrator to a private high-level tournament. The administrator clicked the link. In that instant, a worm, a piece of malicious code more advanced than anything seen before, burrowed into the SSRC network. It was a digital ghost. It didn't announce itself. It simply watched. The 8200 analysts from their base on Mount Hermon were suddenly inside. They saw blueprints. They saw test schedules. And they saw Dr. Al-Khalil's digital workstation. It was a window into his mind. "He's brilliant," one of the coders admitted, watching Al-Khalil's simulation work. "He solved the guidance problem using a predictive algorithm I've never seen. He's compensating for atmospheric drift in real time." The order came from Eitan. Deploy the payload. Operation Midas was activated. The worm was designed to do one thing: introduce microscopic, cascading errors into the manufacturing and guidance data. It would subtly alter the chemical composition for the solid fuel. It would change navigational waypoints by a few thousandths of a degree. The missiles would be built. They would be tested. And they would fail. They would veer off course, or disintegrate from the flawed propellant mix. The first test of the newly Midas-infected prototype was scheduled. The Mossad and Amman leadership watched the live feed from a drone circling high above the Hama test range. The missile launched, it tore into the sky, and it flew perfectly. It hit its target in the desert precisely. In Tel Aviv, the room was stunned into silence. "What happened?" the Mamune demanded. The cyber team was frantic. They checked their code. It was deployed. It had infected the files. They rewatched their own surveillance feeds from inside the SSRC network, looking for the answer. And they found it. 2 days before the test, Dr. Al-Khalil had initiated a full systems diagnostic. The Midas worm, for all its brilliance, had left a tiny, infinitesimal footprint, a slight lag in a data write process. Ben, the analyst from Mount Hermon, was the one who spotted it on the playback. "My God," he whispered. "Look at this. Log file 407B. Al-Khalil had sensed the intrusion. He hadn't fought it. He hadn't tried to delete it. That would have alerted the attackers. Instead, he had quietly and methodically taken his entire program offline. He'd disconnected the manufacturing hubs from the network. He'd ordered his team to purge all digital guidance systems and manually recalibrate every component based on his own handwritten notes. He had identified the corrupted data, isolated it, and treated his own network as a hostile entity. He had performed a digital amputation on his own program, saving the patient by sacrificing the limb. The genius had not only detected the most advanced cyber weapon in Israel's arsenal, he had reverse-engineered its purpose and rendered it useless in 48 hours. The message from Eitan to the Prime Minister's office was bleak. Phase 1 has failed. The target is aware he is being hunted. He has now moved his entire operation into an analog, air-gapped environment. He is no longer a ghost in the machine. He is the machine. Authorization is requested for Phase 2. Phase 2 was a different, older kind of warfare. It meant carbon over silicon. It meant sending a man. The failure of Operation Midas changed the atmosphere in Syria from clinical urgency to cold gravity. The digital gloves were off. Now, the kid gloves of human intelligence, the HUMANT file, had to be opened. The Samet division was tasked with finding a vector. How do you get a physical asset close to a man shielded by the Presidential Guard? "We cannot penetrate the SSRC, the head of operations stated flatly. "It's a black site. We cannot penetrate his home. It's a military compound. We are locked out." "Then we find a new door," Eitan replied. They went back to the pattern of life files. They re-examined every frame of surveillance, every second of intercepted audio. For weeks, they found nothing. Al-Khalil's life was a perfect, closed loop. Facility, home. Facility, home. Then, a junior analyst in the Navy Yacht Pursuit Division flagged something. It was a single, unexplained stop. Once a week, on Thursday evenings, Dr. Al-Khalil's armored convoy would deviate from its route. It would stop in the dense old neighborhood of Barzeh, a northern suburb of Damascus. He would exit the car alone, without his bodyguards, and enter a nondescript 4-story apartment building. He would stay for 2, sometimes 3 hours. Then he would emerge and be driven home. "A mistress?" the operations chief asked. "No," the analyst replied. "We've run background on every tenant. It's clean, no connections, no woman. He goes in alone. He comes out alone. The comms are dark." Eitan leaned forward. "A safe house, not for romance, for work." They realized the truth. Al-Khalil, the genius, was suffocating. He was being crushed by the very military apparatus designed to protect him. The generals, the political liaisons, the constant oversight. They were interrupting his flow. He couldn't think, so he had created a sanctuary, a small anonymous apartment rented under a false name, with no phone, no internet, just a desk, a lamp, a whiteboard, and a kettle for his tea. It was the one place in the world he could be truly alone with the equations. "This is it," Eitan said, a finger tapping the satellite image of the beige apartment building. "This is our door." Now they needed a key. They needed someone who could get inside that building. They needed a new asset. They searched the building's sparse records. The owner was a regime loyalist living in Aleppo. The tenants were simple working-class families. But there was one man who had access to every unit, the building's custodian and maintenance supervisor. His name was Ferris. He was 55 years old, a widower. He was quiet, invisible. And, according to a financial trace, his granddaughter was in a private hospital in Beirut, suffering from a rare blood disorder. The treatments were costing him everything. The plan was formed. A Katsa, a Mossad field officer under a European business cover, would approach Faris in Beirut, not Damascus. The approach would be soft. A charitable foundation had heard of his granddaughter's plight. They wanted to help. The meeting took place in a cafe overlooking the Mediterranean. The Katsa was warm, empathetic. He spoke of his own children. He presented Faris with a cashier's check that would cover the hospital bills for a year. Faris wept. He asked how he could ever repay them. "We only ask for small favors from time to time," the Katsa said gently. "We have business interests. Sometimes we need to know if an apartment is vacant, or if the power grid in a building is stable. Simple things." Faris agreed immediately. The first small favor was a request for the layout of the Barzi apartment building. The second was for the brand of locks used on the doors. The third was a simple question. "The man in apartment 4B, what is he like?" "The professor," Faris said, his brow furrowed. "He is very quiet, very polite. He pays me extra to make sure no one disturbs him. He just thinks. He drinks many, many pots of tea." The final request came a week later. The Katsa met Faris again. "We need to get inside that apartment, just for 10 minutes. We need to leave a package. It is a gift for the professor, from a friend who cannot be seen." Faris's face went pale. "He is important. There are security men in the street." "They don't watch you, Faris," the Katsa said, sliding another envelope across the table. This one contained a German passport and a deed to a small house in Munich. "For your granddaughter. She can get the best care in the world. You and her. A new life." After this one last favor, Faris looked at the passport. He looked at the crashing waves. He was a simple man, caught in a game he could not comprehend. He just wanted to save his family. "I have a master key," he whispered. "He is at the big facility all day on Wednesdays. The apartment is empty." The blueprint was complete. They had the location, they had the window, and they had the key. With the what and where established, the how became the critical question. The operation was transferred to the Kaidan, Spear Unit, the elite section of Mossad responsible for special operations. These were the Erasers. The mission was given a formal code name, Operation Silicon Shadow. Silicon for the genius's mind and his digital prowess. Shadow for the method of his removal. The how was a subject of intense debate. A bomb in the apartment? Too loud. It would create martyrs, confirm an enemy act, and invite massive retaliation. A shooter on the street? Too risky. His convoys were armored, his bodyguards elite. Eitan was adamant. This cannot be an assassination. The title of this file is Erase. It must be ambiguous. It must be silent. The state must be confused. They must believe it was an act of God, a failure of the body. The genius must simply stop. The file was sent to Mossad's small, secretive biological and chemical weapons division. The request was specific, a compound that was untraceable, with a delayed, natural-seeming effect. The scientists returned with a solution. It was not a gas. It was not an injectable. It was a clear, odorless, lipid-based compound, a contact agent. It was designed to be absorbed through the skin, primarily the sensitive skin of the palms and fingertips. Once absorbed, it would do nothing for several hours. It would migrate through the bloodstream, leaving no trace, no inflammation. Then, upon reaching a critical concentration, it would bind to receptors in the brainstem, instantly and catastrophically severing the link between the brain and the heart. The result? A massive, instantaneous cardiac arrest or stroke. By the time an autopsy was performed, the compound itself would have metabolized, its constituent elements indistinguishable from the body's own natural chemistry. It was the perfect, invisible weapon. How is it to be delivered? Eitan asked. He must touch it. Repeatedly. Over the course of an hour or two, the scientist explained. A door handle, a pen, the steering wheel of his car. The operations chief pointed to the file from Faris. He drinks tea. many pots of tea. A new plan formed. The Katsa would not be Lior. The risk of sending an Israeli operative into Damascus for this was too high. The key was already inside. The asset, Faris, would be trained to deploy the agent, but Faris was a custodian, not a Kaidan. He was unstable, terrified. The risk of him panicking, of getting caught, was too great. No, Eitan decided. Faris is the key, not the hand. We need a professional inside. We need Lior. Lior was Mossad's finest blender. He was the gray man, forgettable, quiet, with flawless, unaccented French. He could pass as a Belgian academic, a French journalist, or, in this case, a Swiss engineer specializing in water purification systems, a believable cover in a war-torn country. The new plan was more complex and infinitely more dangerous. Lior would enter Syria from Turkey, his cover established months in advance. He would meet Faris. On the designated Wednesday, Faris would let Lior into the building, using his custodial work as a cover. Lior would have exactly 10 minutes inside apartment 4B. His mission, to apply the compound. But to what? The surveillance team, using a micro camera Faris had accidentally left on a bookshelf during a repair, had been observing Al-Khalil's habits in the safe house for weeks. The pattern was always the same. He would enter. He would lock the door. He would place his keys in a small ceramic bowl. He would go to the small kitchen and prepare his tea. He would then sit at his desk and open his private laptop. The laptop. It was an older model, offline, air-gapped. It was his digital blackboard. He would sit for hours, his fingers flying across the keys, building the algorithms that would guide his missiles. The keyboard, Lior said, studying the grainy footage. He touches every key. It's the perfect delivery system. The plan was set. Lior would not just apply the agent, he would swap the entire keyboard. Mossad technicians acquired an identical laptop model. They painstakingly coated each key with the compound, then cured it under UV light so it was dry, stable, and left no residue. To a naked eye, it was just a keyboard, but to a body, it was a death sentence waiting to be typed. Lior would enter, unscrew the existing keyboard, swap it with the prepared one, and leave. Al-Khalil would come in that evening. He would work, he would type, and within hours, the genius would be erased. The city of Antakya, Turkey, is a crossroads of history, a place where spies and smugglers have bartered for centuries. It was the perfect gray zone to launch Lior. Lior, traveling as Alain Mercier, a Swiss hydrological engineer, had spent the last 3 weeks establishing his cover. He met with Turkish officials, discussed fictional EU grants for water projects, and made himself visible and boring. On a moonless night, he was driven not to the official border crossing, but to a rugged, unwatched patch of terrain. He was not alone. He was guided by a Mossad combat team. This was the most dangerous part. The infiltration. They cut through a forgotten security fence. Lior, dressed in dark civilian clothes and carrying only his Swiss passport and a small backpack, moved with the practiced silence of a man who had done this a dozen times. The border was a minefield, both literally and figuratively. Syrian army patrols, Hezbollah scouts, and various militia groups all hunted in this darkness. His guides led him for 2 kilometers into Syrian territory, to a dirt road. A nondescript, battered 1980s model taxi was waiting. The driver was a Syanim, a local asset who had been on Mossad's payroll for a decade. Lior got in. No words were spoken. The driver handed him a pack of local cigarettes. Lior took one. The driver nodded and began the long, tense drive toward Damascus. They passed through 4 checkpoints. At each one, Lior's heart was a cold stone in his chest. He was Alain Mercier. He was asleep, feigning exhaustion from his long journey from Aleppo. His papers were inspected by bored, weary Syrian soldiers. The driver handled the conversation, complaining about the roads and slipping the guards a small bribe. "Swiss?" one soldier asked, shining a weak flashlight at Lior's face. Lior blinked, looking confused and annoyed. "Oui, engineer. L'eau." "Yes, engineer. Water." The soldier grunted, unimpressed, and waved them on. Lior arrived in Damascus at dawn. The city was a ghost of its former self, but still breathing. He checked into a mid-range hotel, as his cover dictated. He spent the next 48 hours in a state of controlled tension. He met with 2 minor officials at the Ministry of Water Resources, presented his credentials, and talked at length about aquifers and filtration. He was building his alibi in real time. On the second night, he went for a walk. He entered the ancient Hamadiyya souk, a river of humanity, spices, and noise. This was his brush pass. He walked past a small perfume shop. Ferris, the custodian, was inside, examining a bottle of jasmine oil. Lior did not look at him. He simply paused at a stall 2 meters away, pretending to inspect a backgammon board. As he turned to leave, he accidentally brushed against Ferris. "Pardon, monsieur," Lior said. "It is nothing," Ferris replied in Arabic. In that half-second of contact, a small folded piece of paper passed from Lior's hand to Ferris's. On it was a single time and a location, a small, unused alleyway behind the Umayyad Mosque at 11 p.m. Later that night, they met in the shadows. Ferris was visibly shaking. "I cannot do this," Ferris whispered, his teeth chattering. "They will catch me. They will hang me in the square." Lior did not comfort him. He did not reassure him. He applied pressure. "The Foundation has sent the final payment," Lior said, his French-accented Arabic cold and precise. He handed Ferris a phone. "This contains a satellite image of the house in Munich and a live video feed of your granddaughter. She is in the ambulance on her way to the airport. She is leaving Beirut. She is safe." Ferris stared at the screen, at the image of the girl. "If you walk away now," Lior continued, "she lands in Munich with nothing. No passport, no money, no identity. She becomes a refugee of the state. They will take her. You will never see her again." It was a brutal, necessary lie. "If you do this," Lior said, "she wakes up tomorrow in a German hospital, a citizen. You join her in 2 days. You just have to do your job, Ferris. You are a custodian. You have to let a man in to fix a leaky pipe." Ferris looked up, his face a mask of fear and resignation. "Tomorrow. He is at the Hama facility all day. I have the keys. The guards in the street. They know me. They will not stop a maintenance man." "Good," Lior said. He handed Ferris a small, identical-looking cell phone. "This is for you. It has 1 number. Mine. Tomorrow at 10:01 a.m. I will be at the cafe on the corner of your street. I will be the Swiss engineer reading a newspaper. You will walk past. If it is safe, you will do nothing. You will just go to work. I will follow 30 seconds later." Lior melted back into the shadows, leaving Ferris alone with the choice that was never a choice at all. The next morning, the Barzeh district was quiet. Lior sat at a rusted metal table at an outdoor cafe, nursing a thick black coffee he wasn't drinking. He was reading a French-language newspaper, Le Monde. His face was calm, but his entire body was a coiled spring. In his left ear, a nearly invisible flesh-colored receiver crackled with the faint static of his surveillance team, listening from a van parked 3 blocks away. At 9:59 a.m., Ferris appeared. He was pushing his custodian's cart, a bucket and mop clanging softly. He looked gaunt, gray. He did not look at Lior. He simply walked past the cafe and turned the corner toward the apartment building. The signal was, "Go." Lior folded his newspaper. He left a few Syrian pounds on the table and stood up. He walked calmly, unhurriedly, to the building. As he approached, he saw the 2 Presidential Guard security men parked in a black sedan across the street. They were smoking, talking, their eyes scanning the street with bored professionalism. They glanced at Lior, registered his European appearance and business casual clothes, and dismissed him. He entered the lobby. Ferris was there, his back to the door, pretending to fix the hinge on a mailbox. "The elevator is broken," Ferris whispered, not turning. "We must take the stairs." This was a contingency. Lior nodded. Ferris led the way, his boots heavy on the concrete steps. They climbed to the 4th floor. The building was silent. They reached apartment 4B. Ferris's hand was shaking so badly he could barely fit the key in the lock. "Breathe, Ferris," Lior said, his voice flat. "You are a custodian. I am a plumber. We are fixing a pipe. That is all." The lock clicked. Ferris pushed the door open and stepped aside. 10 minutes. I will be at the end of the hall mopping. If someone comes, I will knock the bucket over. You will hear it. You must go out the kitchen window. There is a fire escape. I will be gone, Lior said. He slipped inside. The door closed. He was in the genius's sanctuary. The air was stale, smelling of old coffee and paper. It was exactly as the surveillance had shown. A desk, a laptop, a whiteboard covered in terrifyingly complex equations. A small kitchen, a single unwashed teacup in the sink. Lior didn't pause. He moved to the desk. He pulled a specialized multi-bit screwdriver from his pocket. He was not just an operator. He was a technician. His hands were rock steady. He flipped the laptop over. 1, 2, 3 screws. The bottom panel came off. He gently disconnected the small ribbon cable for the keyboard. He popped the old keyboard out. From his jacket, he removed the new one, identical in every way, its keys coated with the invisible catalyst of erasure. He slotted it in. He reconnected the ribbon cable. This was the delicate part. His fingers, covered in whisper-thin surgical gloves, worked with inhuman precision. Click. It was connected. He replaced the panel. He tightened the screws. He checked his watch. 4 minutes. He stood up. He looked at the whiteboard. The equations were horrifying. He recognized the physics. It wasn't just a missile. Al-Khalil was working on a penetration system, a way to defeat Israel's Iron Dome and aero defense systems using decoys and maneuvering warheads. Eitan was right. This man's mind was a weapon of mass destruction. Lior took a micro camera from his pocket, a tiny button. He pressed it, taking a high-resolution photograph of the whiteboard, a bonus for the Tzomet division. He looked around the room. No fibers, no prints, no trace. He walked to the door, opened it a crack. Faris was at the end of the hall, his back to him, mopping frantically. The hall was clear. Lior slipped out, closing the door. The click of the lock was deafening in the silence. He walked past Faris. He did not say thank you. He did not say goodbye. He simply walked down the stairs, his pace even. He exited the building into the bright Damascus sunlight. The guards in the car did not even look up. Lior turned left, walked to the end of the block, turned right, and never looked back. 10 minutes. The shadow was in place. The trap was set. Lior did not go to his hotel. He went directly to a safe house in the Ghouta district, a clean apartment maintained by a Sayanim. He would remain there in total darkness until the deletion was confirmed and his exfiltration route was clear. He had done his part. The operation now shifted from the Katza on the ground to the ears on the mountain. In the listening post on Mount Hermon, Ben, the analyst, was part of a new team. Their target was no longer the SSRC. Their target was Apartment 4B. The micro-camera Faris had left behind weeks ago was still active, its battery life designed for exactly this. The audio feed was live. The entire Silicon Shadow Command team was assembled in the war room at Caesarea. Eitan, the Memone, watched a bank of screens. One showed the empty apartment in Barze. Another showed the live high-altitude drone feed of the SSRC facility in Hama. Another showed Lior's safe house, a simple heartbeat sensor confirming he was stable. They waited. Hours passed. The tension was a physical presence, a tightening in the chest. At 4:51 p.m., the SSRC feed showed movement. A convoy of black sedans was preparing to leave. Target is mobile, the Hama analyst reported. They tracked the convoy as it sped south on the M5 motorway. He's not going home, the analyst said, tracking the route. He's heading for Barze. At 6:17 p.m., the convoy arrived. The eyes in the surveillance van confirmed it. Target is on foot. Bodyguards are remaining with the vehicles. He is entering the building. In the Mount Hermon station, Ben heard the sound of a key in a lock. Target is in the apartment, he announced. On the screen in Tel Aviv, Eitan watched the grainy black and white footage. Dr. Azim Al-Khalil entered his sanctuary. He looked exhausted. He threw his jacket on the small sofa. He rubbed his face, his movements heavy. The test in Hama had clearly been stressful. He went to the kitchen. The analysts heard the whoosh of the gas stove, the sound of water filling a kettle. He returned to the desk. He sat down. For a moment, he just stared at the wall. Then, he opened the laptop. The room in Caesarea held its breath. Al-Khalil placed his fingers on the keyboard. He began to type. The sound was clear on the audio feed. Clack, 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 clack. Eitan watched, his face impassive. He was watching a man type his own obituary. Al-Khalil worked for an hour. The sound of typing was constant. He was in his flow, his mind deep inside the world of equations. He paused, sipped his tea, and returned to the keyboard. The compound was absorbing through his fingertips. The invisible clock was ticking. At 7:34 p.m., the typing stopped. On the audio feed, Ben heard a sharp intake of breath. Dr. Al-Khalil put his left hand to his chest. He looked confused. He tried to stand, but his legs failed him. He gripped the edge of the desk. "What?" he whispered. It was the last word he ever spoke. He slumped forward, then fell from the chair, out of the camera's view. There was a dull thud as he hit the floor. Then, silence. The command room in Tel Aviv was utterly quiet. The analysts on Mount Hermon listened to the silence. They listened for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. No movement, no sound. Ben reported, his voice hollow. Eitan stared at the empty chair on the screen. He picked up a secure phone. "Lior, Route B, activate exfil, now." He hung up. He looked at his team. "The file is closed," he said. "The genius has been erased." For Lior, the wait was the hardest part. He sat in the dark, clean apartment, with nothing but his own thoughts. He was a weapon that had been fired, and now he was waiting to be reholstered. The signal came, a single encrypted buzz on the burner phone he was given. Route B. Route B was not the Turkish border. That was now considered hot. Route B was south toward the Golan Heights. It was a more dangerous but more direct path to safety. Lior wiped the apartment clean, a process that took him 30 minutes of meticulous forensic effort. He left no DNA, no prints, no fibers. He was a ghost. He stepped out into the Damascus night, just another man walking home. He walked for 2 miles, avoiding main roads, melting into the alleys of the old city. He reached a designated pickup point. A rusted pickup truck, its bed filled with vegetables, pulled up. The driver was another Sayanim. Lior got into the back, burying himself under canvases and crates of tomatoes. The truck drove south, part of the nightly convoy of produce heading for the markets in Dara, near the Jordanian border. This was the axis of resistance highway, thick with Syrian army, Iranian Quds force, and Hezbollah checkpoints. It was a nightmare ride. At the first checkpoint, soldiers, jumpy from a recent ambush, ordered the driver out. They began to search the truck. Lior lay under the canvas, his hand on the small caliber pistol hidden in his belt. He did not breathe. A soldier jabbed a bayonet into the pile of tomatoes, just inches from Lior's leg. "It's just tomatoes, Captain," the driver pleaded. "They will spoil." The soldier grunted, wiping tomato juice off his blade. He was lazy. He didn't want to unload the whole truck. "Go! Get out of here!" The truck moved on. They drove for 4 more hours, a grinding, terrifying journey. Finally, the truck stopped in a desolate, rocky wadi miles from any town. This was the end of the line for the driver. "The border is that way." The driver pointed south. 3 kilometers. Be careful. The Jaish, Syrian army patrols. But the friends are waiting. Lior got out. "God be with you," the driver said. "And you," Lior replied. He moved into the darkness, navigating by compass and the faint stars. This was hostile territory. He was now a soldier, not a spy. He moved low and fast. Twice he froze, hearing the distant rumble of an armored vehicle. He melted into the rocks, becoming invisible. After an hour, he reached the line. It wasn't a fence. It was just a place on a map, the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights. He flashed a tiny, shielded infrared light in a specific pattern, 2 short, 1 long. He waited. 100 meters away, an identical IR light flashed back. He ran toward it. Figures rose from the darkness. They weren't Sayanim. They were Sayeret Matkal, Israel's elite special forces. "Welcome home," the commander whispered, grabbing Lior's arm and pulling him into their perimeter. They didn't rest. They turned and began the fast, silent march back to the fortified Israeli line. As the sun began to rise, painting the Syrian hills a pale, bruised purple, Lior crossed into friendly territory. He was exhausted, dehydrated, but alive. He had erased the shadow and escaped it himself. The body of Dr. Azim al-Khalil was found 2 days later. The Presidential Guard detail, alarmed by his uncharacteristic absence, finally broke protocol and went to his home. His wife, frantic, said she had not heard from him. The security team, now in a full-blown panic, remembered the off-site apartment in Barzeh. They raced to the building, terrifying Faris, who played the role of the confused, frightened custodian. They broke down the door to 4B. They found him on the floor, next to his desk. The room was cold. He had been dead for nearly 48 hours. The scene was one of chaos. The Syrian Mukhabarat, General Intelligence Directorate, sealed the entire block. They tore the apartment apart. They interrogated Faris, who told them, through genuine-sounding tears, that the professor was a kind, quiet man who never bothered anyone. They polygraphed him. He passed. He was a simple man, grieving. He was not a spy. The official state pathologist, a man loyal to the regime, conducted the autopsy. The pressure on him to find a cause was immense. The body was examined. The organs were checked. Blood samples were taken. The conclusion: no signs of trauma. No foreign chemical agents detected. The deceased suffered a catastrophic myocardial infarction, consistent with a life of high stress and overwork. The regime was suspicious. The timing was too perfect. The target too important, but they had no proof. There was no bullet, no bomb residue, no poison. The genius had simply broken. The laptop was seized. The data was analyzed. But the new keyboard, its deadly purpose served, was now just a keyboard. The lipid compound had fully absorbed and dissipated, leaving no trace. The high-resolution photo Lior took of the whiteboard was already being analyzed by Mossad. The equations reverse-engineered. The regime knew it was an assassination, but they could not prove it. To announce he was eliminated would be to admit their security had been breached, to admit their greatest scientific mind had been touched in the heart of their capital. The official state media announcement was subdued. The nation mourns the sudden and tragic passing of Dr. Azim al-Khalil, a prominent national scientist who died of a sudden heart attack. His contributions to the nation's progress will never be forgotten. He was given a state funeral, but the pallbearers were carrying an empty coffin. The real genius was gone. A week later, Faris and his granddaughter boarded a flight from Munich to Montreal, their new identities, courtesy of the charitable foundation, secure. He was a ghost, too, erased from his old life. The removal of Dr. al-Khalil did not end the Syrian missile program overnight, but it erased its brain. The regime tried to continue his work. They brought in his deputies, his research team. They had his notes. They had his digital files, the ones he kept before Midas. They had the facility, but they didn't have him. The program was built on a genius's intuition. His formulas were cryptic. His analog notes were filled with theoretical leaps that only he understood. His air-gapped laptop, which held the key to the next generation of guidance systems, was now locked. Al-Khalil, in his brilliance and paranoia, had encrypted it with a 256-bit key that existed only in his head. The laptop was a digital coffin. The attempts to replicate his work failed. The next test launch, assembled by his subordinates, was a catastrophic failure. The missile exploded on the launch pad. The project, which had been a symphony conducted by a single maestro, collapsed into a cacophony of competing, mediocre ideas. Within 6 months, the SSRC solid fuel program was quietly and indefinitely suspended. The regime's shield had dissolved. The existential threat to Israel, the 700-kilometer solid fuel gun to the head, was gone. The erasure was not just physical, it was intellectual. It was total. In Tel Aviv, Eitan stood before the Prime Minister. "The threat is neutralized, sir," Eitan reported. "And the man?" the Prime Minister asked. Eitan paused. He thought of the grainy photo of al-Khalil and his daughter. "The man is gone. The program is deleted." "Good," the Prime Minister said, turning back to the other fires, Iran, Hezbollah, Gaza. The file was closed. The crisis was over. But Eitan knew that erasure is a complex thing. You can delete a man, You can delete a program, but you cannot delete the idea. The work of Dr. Azim al-Khalil, his genius, his equations, his patriot's ambition, had left an echo. His published papers were still studied. His fundamental theories were still sound. The knowledge was out in the world. He had been erased. But the need for his work, in the eyes of Syria and its allies, was now greater than ever. The story of Operation Silicon Shadow is not one of triumph. It is a story of brutal clinical necessity. It is a case study in the new warfare, where a nation's greatest weapon is not a tank, but a single human mind, and where the most effective counterweapon is not a bomb, but a single, invisible touch. In the quiet offices of Caesarea, the file on Dr. Azim al-Khalil is sealed. It is a success. The state of Israel was secured. The balance of power was restored. Lior, the gray man, continues his work. He is Alain, Michael, Dmitri. He is the hand that writes the balance, the shadow that serves the light. He does not sleep well, but he sleeps soundly, secure in the knowledge of his purpose. Eitan, the Mamune, retired to a quiet life. He sometimes looks at the file, at the photo of the man he ordered erased. He feels the cold, hard calculus of his decision. The life of one genius versus the lives of thousands. It is a math he has had to do many times. It never gets easier. And in Damascus, the SSRC facility in Hama lies dormant, a monument to a brilliant ghost. The program is gone, but the ambition remains. The civil war grinds on, and the regime still searches for its shield. The erasure of Dr. al-Khalil did not solve the fundamental conflict. It simply deleted a variable from a complex and unending equation. A new generation of physicists is now studying in Germany, in Russia, in North Korea. They are young, they are brilliant, and they are patriotic. Somewhere, in a dorm room or a quiet lab, a new genius is sketching on a whiteboard, dreaming of equations that can protect his homeland. The game continues. The silence of Mount Hermon is just an intermission, a pause as the sentinels listen for the next new discordant note. If you found this investigation compelling, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. We declassify new operations every week here at Cinematic Intel.